try. I would only do it poorly as a joke.
Hey guys, you say it say it however you want to say it.
Well, now I don't know if you want to give us
Don't
that
give
much
us the
leeway.
license to say it.
What have I done?
Yeah.
Actually, you're very lucky. You're very lucky that you have a last name that's not very easy to make fun of. And don't give us any
true.
ideas.
No, I'm not going to.
On the contrary, here are multiple ways you can make fun of my name.
Yeah, you can. Are we live, Ethan?
Yeah, we are.
We are live. Okay. You were watching behind the scenes of the Run With It podcast. We have Barnaby Lashbrook here. He is the founder of Time, Etc., and the author of The Hard Work Myth. We're going to talk about goal setting, a way to facilitate more goal setting, better goal setting. And you guys are going to see the unedited version and the video of this podcast recording. If you'd like to listen to the polished version, that's all clean and tightly edited, and we're not making fun of Barnaby's name, then subscribe to us on your podcast player of choice. Episode will be out in a couple of weeks. We'd love to hear any feedback that you have from us, any feedback that you have for us. Email us at update@runwithit.fm with that, or you can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. That would be super helpful. With that, you guys ready to get into the recording?
Let's do it.
Okay. Welcome to Run With It, the show that brings you untapped business ideas from successful entrepreneurs. My name is Chris Justin, and I'm here with Ethan Janney. Ethan, how's it going?
Going pretty good. Just enjoying life. You know, it's good to be alive.
You say that with such gusto, man. I mean, it's not really matching. Yeah, wrap up. Come on.
I'm alive.
So we've got Barnaby Lashbrook here on the episode. Nice. He is the founder of Time, Etc. He is also the author of The Hard Work Myth. He was working a ton of hours back in a previous company that he had been running, and then he committed to reducing his time to 35 hours per week. And he found that his business skyrocketed when he did that. So someone that we are excited to learn from. You're bringing us an idea to help set goals more effectively. This is something that I'm going to press you on because it seems like these are ubiquitous goal setting apps, and everyone has advice on how to do it. So we'll get into all of that. But first off, tell us how you came up with this idea.
Well, I've had a sort of life mission to help people achieve more for quite a few years. I wrote myself a note probably 5 years ago that was like, my mission is to help people achieve more. And it's kind of what I do in my day job with my business, Time, etc. But, you know, something has bothered me over the years helping people to achieve more, which is that a lot of people set goals, but not a lot of people hit them. And so I'm talking about, I've had experience with 22,000 clients of Time, etc., and watched many of those often time poor entrepreneurs struggle to hit the goals that they set. But I'm also talking about like friends of mine, peers, myself. You know, it's quite easy to set a goal, but not so easy to hit it. And it was kind of bothering me. I then sort of looked up, is there, science behind this? Are there stats behind it? And I find that 92% of people don't hit the goals that they set. So, it's quite a big problem, you could say, that's quite significant. But then, if you Google how to hit goals, there are only really sort of a few things that come up time and time again for what you should do to hit a goal. And those things don't really seem like that complicated to me. So they're things like breaking the goal down into smaller steps, making sure you track your progress against the goal, keeping the goal in front of you, at the front of your mind. And then a big one is building accountability for yourself around that goal. So making sure you hold yourself accountable. And what I've seen is that people don't consistently do those 4 things. And I think they don't do them because it's pretty hard actually to consistently do those things. So especially if you take that accountability piece and you think about, well, how do I, as a entrepreneur working on my own, perhaps, really truly manufacture accountability to help me stick with a goal? Well, it's pretty hard to do, because unless you're, say, an entrepreneur who's raised investment capital and you've got a whole bunch of investors breathing down your neck, they're going to hold you pretty accountable. But if you're not in that position, what are you going to do? Ask your partner, go and ask your friends. It's pretty hard to find someone that's actually genuinely going to hold you accountable to hitting that goal. Sorry.
No, go ahead. If you had something you wanted to say, I was going to bring in another point, but yeah.
The other thing I was going to say is what I've also seen is people sort of set goals and then forget about them. And so, the classic example of that is big New Year's resolution, setting, a big goal for the year ahead. Lots of entrepreneurs, including myself, can identify with that. This is where I want my business to go this year. And then literally every single day, forgetting all about that goal at the beginning of that day. So starting the day just takes over. You end up doing a whole bunch of stuff, but not necessarily orientated around that goal. And then when I was writing the book, The Hard Work Myth, I looked at lots of very successful entrepreneurs and, people that have really gone on to achieve. And I saw that those people really do keep goals front and center. So they really do start the day with that goal in mind, and orientate everything that they do each day towards that goal. So my idea, given all of that, is a platform that helps you do those things. So a platform where you log on, you type in your goal. It maybe helps you to make that a specific and actionable and time-bound goal. So maybe it does a bit of AI when you're typing that goal in and makes some suggestions for you. It then helps you break that goal down into steps. So it maybe starts saying to you, look, what could you do towards this goal this week? What could you do towards this goal this month? And then what this platform does is it reminds you about that goal every day. So it keeps it front and center. It has a very simple way of tracking your progress towards that goal. So I'm not trying to make a task management system or a sort of, some sort of project management tool. What I'm getting at is, it gauges your progress towards that goal, maybe in a really low tech way. And then the big thing that this does is it holds you to account. And I think it could do that using some sort of like chat mechanism. And so, maybe you get a little push notification at the beginning of each day saying, look, hey, a reminder, this is your goal. This is what you're aiming for today or this week. This is what you said you could achieve this week. And then maybe you get another push notification and it's all done chat style, whether that's bot or AI or human, where, it checks in with you at the end of the day and it says, what did you do towards the goal today?
Let's pause here because there's a lot to unpack, and I think we'll get into the nitty gritty of how this app could work and the system can work. But I'm impressed first.
That having been said, we usually don't let our guests talk for that long at the very top. But your ideas are so kind of well laid out. It was just like, okay, well, let's. I mean, clearly you've been thought about this, so we're excited.
It was
to
very
have a
well
conversation.
organized. We appreciate that. I'm impressed that one of the first things that you brought up, one of the research of 92% of people that set goals don't hit it. That is a pretty good answer to my objection that I laid out before we even let you speak of why is there room for another app here? The ones that exist, I mean, the majority of people haven't found something that works for them. So finding a system that does work is obviously it would be very valuable, and it would be valuable to the vast majority of people.
Yeah, I think the reason that sort of stat sat with me and that I've remembered it is because there was a huge moment of relief when I discovered that statistic, because, you know, it's really normal not to hit goals that you set. And I think that's the opportunity. If that's the normal, then there's clearly a big market opportunity to address that, you know, and achieve some kind of improvement on what is a really, really, you know, worrying statistic.
Yeah, let's talk about an existing software that aims to help people achieve goals and to stay accountable. Accountability is the big feature of this program called Stick K. Is that how we say it? Stick K? Chris, I know you've used it as well.
I always just said stick.
Okay.
But yeah, maybe they say stick K. You sound like a grandpa describing it.
What is that app they call Stick K? Stick K.
Yeah.
No, but
tell us about Stick K.
Well, yeah, I mean, all I can say is I did listen to a couple of other podcast episodes, interviewing some of the founders of that app. So I, you know, did a little bit of research on it. I haven't actually used it myself. I've heard people talk about it a lot. And actually, it's interesting, Chris, you and I, just a couple of days ago, we had kind of a back and forth around this app and, you know, is this useful? I would say for the most part, what I've experienced is I hear people talking about it and getting excited about it. And they like to talk about how it's cool. And then they use it. And then I don't hear them using it, you know, for a long period of time. Maybe it's like a one-off thing, or they use it for a couple of months, and then it's just not like a long-term strategy to keeping yourself accountable to things. But, you know, maybe you should throw in your experience, because I know you used it at least over a longer extended period of time.
Yeah, I
months,
did.
Right?
I committed to using it for, I think it was 9 months, and this is several years back. And someone else had held the keys to the system, so to speak. So the way Stick works is you commit to doing something, and you have a trusted person who is going to verify that you have done that on a weekly basis, let's say. And if you don't do it, then your account gets charged $10, let's say. If you do it, then the system is free for you. At least it was at that time. It was incredibly motivating to accomplish that. I think I very rarely, if ever, missed when doing it. But I think the challenge, and I think this is true for goal setting apps in general, is the meta habit, right? The using of that tool in itself. At some point, you say to yourself, a lot of people do, I don't really feel like doing this, and I don't want to use the tool that I have to track my habits. I've gone through plenty of them. I have one I'm using right now is called Streaks on my phone. And I just, you know, I feel bad about looking at all these things I should be doing. Like, you know, I'll just read you some of them that I have here. Less than one finance check per day. No news during work. Note distracting tasks rather than pursuing them. You know, some of these I have done, but some of them I read for 30 minutes. I haven't done that. I just feel like crap about it. So I don't use the app at all.
Yeah, one of the things that I think comes up with a lot of this goal setting stuff is you get into this area of increasing stress level and increasing self-criticism. And even in some of the interviews that I heard with the founder of Stick K, he talked about it with someone in the context of like a medical setting, you know, people who need to lose weight or quit smoking, get on some healthy habit. And he did keep using this phrase, you need to meet people where they're at, you know, and I think that was interesting, right? Like he said, you provide some accountability, maybe that their friends and family don't know about for a little while, and it's just within the app. And then maybe as they kind of get a little bit more comfortable, then you start allowing them to share their goals with friends and family so that they can, you know, have that support, and maybe they're feeling a little bit more open about it. As someone who coaches people, I have to say, and from my own experience, there is a sort of magical and not so magical, I guess, threshold where there's a certain personality type that's very self-critical, and they actually thrive on that for a certain portion of their life. You know, maybe their parents told them when they were a kid that 95% wasn't good enough and they could only get 100s, and they had that inner voice that's always telling them, you got to achieve. At some point it breaks down because, the achievement of the goal, if it's just based on the threat of a punishment or something like that, there's a threat to lose momentum. So anyways, I think that's a little bit meta to our discussion about like, how are we going to engineer the app? But it's maybe important to consider in terms of how it can be marketed and I guess really used consistently. I think that's our main issue here. It needs to be something that people actually would consistently use, or we decide it's just something they come on and we intentionally say they're probably going to use it a little bit and then move on, and we get other users through referrals or something like that.
I think there is a sort of really important point wrapped up in all of that, which is that it's got to make people feel good about themselves, and that that fuels the repeat usage. And the app that sort of so I think that some habit-based apps seem to me to be designed not to make me feel good about myself if I'm not the kind of person that can be very strict with what I do every day, for example, which, Chris, I think is what you were saying about what the app that you're using. It's designed for a certain personality type, and certainly I would feel the same way about that app, which is that I'd start feeling bad about myself because I hadn't had the discipline to read or do the other things on there. But if an app could hold you to account, break your goal down into really small steps that feel very non-threatening, and could show you the progress you were making through those millions of small steps, and then encourage you, I think it could potentially become really attractive as a habit-forming app, because it's releasing dopamine, it's getting you into a place where you feel really good about yourself, and that's going to be the draw to come back to it, rather than the thing these other habit apps might be fighting, which is you don't feel good when you open the app and look at it, which is a really bad thing for an app designed to have, right? Because from a user retention point of view, that's going to be swimming upstream.
It's the opposite of the sort of dopamine hits that people like to talk about.
Yeah, I think that's a really insightful way of taking this on. I haven't seen many apps that use AI or coach you through the process of breaking down your goals. I've seen a lot of tracking apps, and one that I've used in the past, Coach.me. I am a fan of what they do, but I don't. If I'm looking at my goals on there, which I have not opened this in probably years at this point, but something like get 20 minutes of sunlight, GTD daily review. If I think about that, like that sounds super easy, right? Get 20 minutes of sunlight. How much easier could that be? But if I try and think through how to actually do that, it's Pittsburgh. The sun doesn't come out till 7:45 a.m. I mean, you live in England, so it's you're probably a similar situation.
What is the sun?
7:45 a.m. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I'm neck deep in work at that point, and I have to try and prioritize and remember to go back to this app to do things. And yeah, it's just it's easier to not do it, as opposed to if there was some AI that said, okay, when are you going to do that? And then I'd have to think through and like, okay, it's winter, but I do have some time before lunch. So get 20 minutes of sunlight from 11:40 till noon today. The other thing that I think is a challenge with this is, I lost my train of thought as you were going to say something, Ethan, so you go for it.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, let's get into kind of monetization or getting started a little bit. Now, this is a lot broader market, but this is a statistic I found. Productivity management software market size should be worth $102 billion by 2027, according to Grandview Research Incorporated. Going back to the Stick-K software, let's like tell the story of that, how that got started, and think about maybe how that influences how we got started. So the fellow that started that software, he collaborated with a few university professors at Yale, and they each put in like $75,000. So he started out with a small round of funding, and he did develop like maybe a $10 or $20,000 worth of just a simple app, so he could do a proof of concept of it. and then started to grow and hire from that. Ended up raising a little bit more money. As I check on Crunchbase here, it doesn't look like he raised any more than $2.2 million so far. And that was back in 2009, which is interesting. I kind of get the sense, I don't know, that this is not a growing company necessarily. I feel like it kind of stabilized and stagnated in some degree. Interesting things along the way. He said he ditched his academic partners because investors hate academics as other investors. They're like, no, this is never going to be profitable if you have academics investing in it. And I think, but he did say that he did get magical publicity. You know, there was sort of like the concept of it was so sticky, for lack of a non-pun type of a word, that he actually had Good Morning America, I think it was, call him, and they wanted to do his launch on Good Morning America on January 1st in a year, that they were going to launch it, and he didn't have the software together in time, so he couldn't take advantage of it. But he was getting that kind of that kind of press around this kind of thing. And that is part of what the Yale University professors were good for, was credibility. So they had people not spending for the company, I don't think, but they would put up to $250 on the line, right, using their app. For those who don't know, Stick K is like you put some money down, and if you don't achieve your goal, it gets taken to some charity that you hate or something. But yeah, so we could potentially use some of these ingredients to get started. Finding like a catchy hack, that's shareable and memeable, and could get into the publicity market. Maybe partnering with psychologists or academics, behavioral specialists, for that name recognition, but also maybe some scientific understanding of how these things work. I mean, if it were me, I'll say what my first step is. Maybe other people would share. Maybe I'd go to first, who are the behavioral specialists in goal setting? And I would go to partner with them, just like the Stick K folks did. I probably plan to ditch them after a year or two, just like they did as well. But, just to get, I'm just kidding, but just to get the, just to get the science behind it, and then the added benefits involved. Would anybody take a different step first? Yeah, go ahead, Barnaby. You're on.
I was just going to say that I think you hit the nail on the head, which is that it absolutely has to actually work. And I think that's where the credibility of, expert-led design comes into it, that it has to work, because it has to take people through the process of achieving that goal. It has to generate the dopamine and help people to feel good about themselves, and help people to feel like they're making some progress towards those goals. And I think like getting that right with an expert-led approach, it not only adds credibility from a press point of view, but I think, just to know that this isn't a tool, or to know that this is a tool that could make genuine impact on someone's life, it has to be based on, the psychology behind how you achieve a goal and how you manufacture that progress towards that goal.
One aha that I'm having as we're describing this is, to counterbalance what you just shared there, it does not have to work for everyone. People have very different motivations, very different life situations. Different tools would work for different people. Someone who, for whom Stick really appeals, might not be as motivated by a positive reinforcement type of approach, or one that allows you to clearly call out the next steps, et cetera. And that's completely okay. It's still a massive market, right? You're not trying to solve goal. You don't need to solve goal setting for those 92% of people who can't do it. If you can even get 10% of them or 15% of them, that is absolutely worth it. Huge benefit to society, and can make for a big business.
I feel like sorry, go on.
Go ahead. No, you.
Well, I was going to say that I think the goals have to matter, and I know that sounds really basic, but there are different types of goals. And so, do you tackle goals that people have around addressing habits that are maybe deeply baked into their psychology, even possibly from childhood, or because of trauma, or because of upbringing? and try and counter those. So, you know, what would that be? To drink less alcohol, or to exercise more, or, you know, to quit smoking? Do you go after those goals, which are, you know, lifestyle potentially very ingrained into people, potentially removing pleasure from people's lives? Or do you focus on aspirational goals? So, you know, my market is the entrepreneur market. And so I understand that really well, that as an entrepreneur, I want to be able to set a goal, say, for growth of my business this year, and break that down and, you know, make positive small steps every day towards that goal. And that's probably more the goal I have in mind when I think about this this app versus the sort of tackling the habitual kind of goals.
I had this kind of funny idea, which is a totally terrible idea, but basically allowing people to kind of celebrate the terrible habits that they can just like set a great goal. I'm going to take 5 shots tonight. I'll take a shot every time he says tomato, like whatever. Like, oh, I did it. It's an accomplishment. You know, just have some fun with people making fun of themselves. But you know, seriously, I think that one thing that as you mentioned in some of the stuff you sent to us before we started is you know, the corporate market, and that's really interesting as well. In listening to the story of the Stick K, continue to use this example. It seemed like at the time of the episode I was listening to, he was, you know, how can we get into corporations? How can we do that? And there often is, there's some benefits there. Number one, because there's sometimes more money flowing. And number two, there's more structure already. So you don't have to provide as much external structure because there's probably some structural things in place. And number three, like the goals can just be, you know, they're just not so monumental for people. Like people have their monumental goals of losing, you know, 100 pounds or something like that. But it could just be, you know, I'm going to get this report done by, you know, Tuesday or something like that. So it could be an interesting place to get, even just go ahead and get started there and then let it spread out to the wider market for publicity purposes or something like that.
I want to share another example of a recent app that I've heard about that has become growing, that's been growing in popularity. It's called Spar. And I know it's on iPhone. I'm not sure if you can get it on Android, but it's the tagline, Spar is the challenge app. Doing stuff is hard. Spar makes staying motivated a piece of cake. It's a really cool approach to habits, more so than goals necessarily, but maybe something that we didn't it's not something we explicitly called out, but habits are a key aspect of forming a goal. Of course, if you want to lose weight, then you want to have a habit of not eating cake, or you want to make sure that you're exercising regularly, whatever it is. Anyway, the way that the app works is you commit to, let's say, daily journaling 1 time a day for 14 days. And if you miss it, and the way that you ensure that you've done it is you have a video check-in. So you actually record yourself, holding up your journal, for example, to show that you've done it. And if you miss it, then you have to pay $5 into a pot of everyone who has committed to that activity over their same length of time. If at the end of the time, the person who has missed fewest, and if it's a tie, it's the people, that pot gets distributed among all of them. So you have this financial incentive where that's very motivating. Spar takes 10% of the pot. That's how they make money. But I know I heard about this from Ryan Holiday. He is a huge fan. He's actually on the homepage as one of the videos. He's been talking about it a lot in his newsletter. So, this is something that Spar, as far as I'm aware, it came out in the last year. This example that, this is something that it's it's a market that is ripe for innovation still, even though we've talked about this being, I brought up that concern that's still in the back of my head of there's so many ways that you can do this. There's still new ones that are coming out that are becoming wildly popular.
Yeah, in terms of the psychology of it, by the way, going back to this topic of, not discouraging people, I'm liking the idea of a potential working title of "you're doing it." Like you're doing it, right? Like not like you didn't do it, or, you know, reminding people when they're not doing things. Cause that's one thing that I've noticed, not to be the designer of this app again, cause we can talk to, you know, psychologists and experts in this. But one thing I've noticed in my coaching is that what happens is people, they get discouraged because they don't really feel like they're actually on that path, especially if they have a setback, right, along the way. So I think it's useful. It would be useful to have some kind of app where along the way, even if you don't do it, it's still some way it informs you that you're doing it because you're still looking at the app, right? Like you're still paying attention. You still are focused on this. You are, you know, discouraged that you didn't get it done. And that's part of the process, right? Failures are part of the process. So
I think
that could be an interesting take on it.
That comes back to that thing of making people feel good about themselves. That, right. You know, that will make the app extremely powerful, I think, if it can find a way to frame, as you say, even, you know, maybe missing out on doing it that particular day, showing you the progress that you've made that week, or showing you the progress that you've made over the course of the month. And, you know, that driving that, like in doing it through entirely positive psychology, I think could be a point of difference, could make it really interesting, and then could drive that sort of desire to log back in if you're going to feel good about yourself.
We haven't talked much about the financial model here. I think that we need to dive into that. How do you make money? Is this an app that we think you'd want a subscription fee to? And if so, I think that would be a big barrier because there's so many free apps out there, and people underestimate the value of a better system, right? If you just say, well, this one does 50% of what that one does, I'm just going to use this one as opposed to paying $10 a month even. So I'm just going to put that out there. And then two, the brilliance of Spar in my mind is people go to that app and everyone overestimates what they're going to be able to do. So they see this, I was like, I'm going to make money on this, right? Like there's a pot for $80 to do a 1-minute plank for 14 days, right? Like I can do a 1-minute plank for 14 days. Like pay me out. I'll take $80 for doing 1-minute planks. Sure. So there's something brilliant in the way that that's set up. How could we make it motivating for people to give us money?
Now, this may be a terrible idea again, and that's what I'm here for, just bringing terrible ideas. Chris brings the good ideas, I bring the terrible ones. But, you know, what if we reversed the psychology of the existing things like Stick, where they take money from you, you know, as you're trying to do things, you know, get things accomplished? So like, I mean, what if we said you subscribe for a year, but if at the end of the year you don't achieve your goal, you get your money back? And it, you know, on the first side
because
of it,
92% of people don't achieve their goal.
Exactly, but at first sight, right, it makes it seem like, well, then people are just going to go ahead and subscribe, and then they're going to ask for their money back at the end of the year, right? Well, the thing is, if you really think about it, what would it feel like if you did achieve a goal, and you then ask for your money back, just kind of like trying to game the system? That would feel pretty crappy. And I don't think people would do it. I mean, you'd have a few people. It's kind of like money back guarantees on anything. There's only a very, very small portion of people that actually, you know, use those type of warranties. So there's that aspect of it, that if you did achieve the goal, you'd probably just feel like, you know what, they deserve it. I did it. You know, like, yeah, let's all celebrate, and I'll pay for this thing, and that's fine. I'm not going to ask for my money back. And on the other hand, if you didn't achieve it and you had to go, and you had to say, all right, I want my money back because I didn't achieve it, there is some sort of like it's like kind of like a, you know, oh, right, you win, right? You don't win, right? So it's like, you would think that somebody might do that with a feeling like, I still win because I get my money back. But you really don't. And I think that there might be still that kind of a motivation in it that, hey, I paid for this, and for some reason I fell short, and not like a feeling bad about oneself, but a feeling of, yeah, this is on me. Like encouraging people to remember that it is their responsibility in the end. I think that's part of what these apps do is they actually take away your autonomy and your responsibility a little bit. It's like, oh, we'll take some of the responsibility off. We'll put this framework in and stuff like that. But if in the end you're kind of reminded, you know what, it is, up to you in the end. There is something that has to be done on your part to really make this happen. Anyway, there's my bad idea for the day.
Well, in terms of monetization, I feel like I come back to this idea that it's about chasing the goals that are meaningful or have significant impact for people. So I think you can charge subscriptions, you can monetize when you're helping people to achieve really significant goals. So if it's a sales team achieving a sales goal, I think people will pay for that if it delivers. As an entrepreneur, if there was something that could glue me onto my goals and keep me focused on those every day and genuinely help me every day do one small thing towards my business growth goals, it's worth money to me. And perhaps, if it was a significant healthcare goal, so if it was, targeting someone that's on the edge of diabetes, for example, and, driving them away from a sort of more serious healthcare outcome, then maybe, there's significant value in that. So I feel like how you monetize it is, in my view, to monetize it, you move away from things like, can you do, 10 press-ups every day for a week? And you move it towards significant goals that really matter to the people that are trying to achieve them.
So I think it could be cool to start with sales teams. I think that's not a bad place to start. And it kind of gets us away from this sort of mass market appeal that we might have thought would be appealing at first. But there are a lot of appeals to it. And you could even aim for sales teams that tend to have certain revenue goals, right? Like I'm going to work on providing this app for sales teams that have revenue goals above, $50,000 a month or something, right? And then that way, if I charge some money for this app, they'll have the budget to pay for it, right? And if they make money from the whole process, then it's a no-brainer. They made some money, and so they can put it back into something like this. Interesting place to start.
I want to share a couple stories, one new, one old, about ways that people have hacked together their own systems for achieving what they're looking for. One is, it's made the rounds, blogger Manish Sethi. He is the brother of Ramit Sethi. He paid a woman $8 per hour to slap him in the face every time he got off task. He got a ton of coverage for this. And actually, he turned it, you think that there may not be a business idea in that. He turned that into a wearable. That wearable was on Shark Tank. It was Pavlov.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. He got eviscerated by Mark Cuban on that show.
Yeah, I remember.
It did not go well, but I think that he's still, still around, still running Pavlok. So, there's an interesting take on how you could do this.
I didn't realize, I'm sure this joke has already been made, but I didn't realize you could get such an affordable rate for having a woman slap you around.
Yep, there's a still shot here from mid slap. He's bracing for it on the New York Daily News. So she looks like she is taking great pleasure in slapping him in the face. I think that's part of the compensation. The other one that comes to mind for me whenever you're talking about habit change is Odysseus. If you've ever read Homer's Odyssey, probably the most famous part of the story there is as they're crossing the sea and they're nearing these sirens who are incredibly compelling, and everyone just crashes their boats into the sirens if you get near them and you hear the song, right?
For those that are not familiar, a siren is sort of like it's kind of some sort of a being that sings this song that's irresistible. And then if you go to them, you're in peril.
Yeah. So what he did is he wanted to hear the song, but he didn't want to crash his ship, of course. So he had his men tie him to the mast of the ship, and they put earwax in their ears. So he could not, move the ship closer to the sirens to crash. And really, that's the old version of a pre-commitment device, which is a key aspect of any sort of habit formation, of a lot of habit formation type apps. And I mean, that's what Stick and Spar are doing. They have in common is they say that you say you're going to do something. People have these concepts of, I'm going to New Year's resolutions, right? I'm going to lose 20 pounds. And if you can pay that, collect the money when people are in that state, then you have a much higher success of, in my opinion, of collecting the money when people are actually going about their daily lives and having to report out on that. So this is one of those cases where if you can, maybe a yearly subscription makes more sense than a monthly one, and you really try and hammer it in December.
There's a weight loss app called Noom that does exactly that. So that is it's all about an annual subscription paid up front for the next 12 months. So I think
knew someone that worked for that as a coach, and they actually, one of the interesting features of Noom is they've done a really good job of like training a mass workforce of coaches that can help people along with their goals. And that's an interesting aspect to incorporate too. Yeah, sorry to interrupt. If there was something you were going to complete.
Well, so no, their revenue, I think 2019, 2020 was 237 million. So, you know, big success story, and really interesting to see how they really put that accountability at the heart of what they're doing with the coaching network, as you say.
So let's go back to some action steps and some things that we talked about already. I'm just going to continue along this line of like sales teams. Maybe they have $50,000 a month revenue goals, and maybe you can easily charge $50 a month for an app for a sales team that has a $50,000 revenue goal. It's really a small portion of what you're helping with. Maybe we could start by just going into a company, right, that has that kind of a goal, and start working with the sales team and just start talking to the individuals about, what are your goals, and, and notice when things are working and when they aren't. And, what kind of things do they have in place? Spreadsheets, CRM softwares, whatever type of things that they're already using. And then maybe after spending a week, a month or two with them, documenting how they do things and noticing when things work and when things don't, then you start to incorporate things in an app. Then you start to give them the app, and they start to test it and give you feedback, and you iterate from there. And by the sixth month, maybe you have 4 more clients that are similar on board testing the app. And I could see that within a year, you could have something pretty cool, that would maybe even integrate with some existing, CRMs or lead management softwares.
I think the great thing about doing the way you suggest is you build your case studies while you develop the product. And so, you end up right from the start with those invaluable case studies showing where the performance increases happened in real life examples. And I think sometimes when you're launching something new, those are the hardest things to get, because you kind of have to break the door down and, persuade people. But to develop it in partnership with the sales team, I can see that being a really appealing thing for the sales team as well, because, if someone knocks at your door and says, look, developing something, it's free. I am fascinated by the idea of driving up your sales performance and taking all of that workload that managers and coaches have within sales teams of checking in with people every day, making sure they've done X number of calls, making sure that they're on track, keeping them held to account. Or taking all of that workload away from someone is pretty appealing, I imagine, for the average sales coach or manager.
And I think also, since it worked well for Stick K, you could take this approach of raising some funding, and you could you could get some university professors on board. They'd love to get their hands dirty, working on this with you, and go into a company. But yeah, try to get just maybe a couple $100,000 on into the project at first, just to have some funding to get going. Maybe for that first month or two, it is something you do for free. But within 6 months, trying to raise a little bit of money so that you're not just sitting around on spec, wondering if this is going to work out. But this does seem like a project where I love that price point of $50 a month, and we could go higher depending on what kind of app we want to make. but you could aim for volume, think about a $50 per month price point, and get some funding so that you have some room to really develop it and work it out, and then launch it maybe within a year or two, and start piling users on board and hit the ground running.
I think that's a good place to wrap for us here. To the listener who is in love with this idea, you're all about habits and goals. Let us know what you think. What are we right on? What are we wrong on? Email us at update@runwithit.fm. We'd also really appreciate a review on Apple Podcasts. That's super helpful in getting more people to find out about us and subscribe to us. Barnaby, where can people go to learn more about you and what you're working on?
So my business is called Time Etc, and that's at timeetc.com, and that's a virtual assistant service that connects entrepreneurs with executive assistants on subscription, so without all the hassle of hiring people. And then there's hardworkmyth.com, which is the website for my book, and you can grab a copy of the book in PDF form on there for next to nothing.
Excellent. And by the way, we didn't mention this during the episode, but I've been using Time Etc for a year or two already, and I've been having good results. I feel like it's the price point is a little bit higher than your sort of traditional VA in the Philippines or something like that. But that's what I found is it was a lot more worth it to pay for somebody that's going to do a better job, have a higher level of commitment. And one thing that I really love about Time Etc is I feel like, I'm not sure what you all do behind the scenes, but I feel like somebody else is sort of managing my assistant for me, and I'm the one just giving them the tasks, but that you have an infrastructure so that they know what to do as an assistant. I think when you pay for these less expensive ones, you have to manage them a lot more than you would if you were able to invest. So thank you very much for creating this option.
You're very welcome. It's about taking the hassle out of it. That's what we tried to do. So it started because I needed support as an entrepreneur, and you just don't want any hassle getting that support. You just need access to people that are going to help you to get stuff off your to-do list.
Thanks.
Great. Barnaby, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. Looking forward to catching up again later on.
Thank you.
Okay, and we'll sign off to the virtual listeners as well. I'm going to stop recording here. I know we're at time, but if you have a couple seconds, we'd love to hear any feedback that you have for us on the episode.